My name is Lowell Nofziger. I'm the youngest son of Louis and Velma Heddings Nofziger. And yeah, I was born in Lebanon, not the Middle East. It was actually Lebanon, Oregon. And we lived on a farm, a ryegrass farm about 5 miles east of 5 miles west, of Lebanon. And yeah, we had 80 acres out there, and it was a ryegrass and barley farm. We had the usual animals because it was a big orchard, gardens, pigs, chickens, cows. Yeah, I had two siblings. My brother was 11 years older than I, and let's see, he was 11 years older, and I had a sister that was 8 years older. And yeah, things went pretty well. I was told at 3 months old I had pneumonia, and they didn't expect me to live through the day. And then my grandma, the only grandparent I ever knew, Ada Heddings, she came over. She had us this German concoction called Braunschmier. It was she soaked a washcloth in it and laid it on my chest, and I must have made it because I'm here today. So anyway, that's about it. Everything went pretty good for about 3 years. And then my dad died on his 36th birthday. Yeah, he was only 36. He had a tumor. I remember him even as young as I was. He was in a lot of pain. So they knew he had a tumor on the brain. And so they decided in Portland they were going to remove it. And, technology wasn't great in those days. And I do remember the last time I saw him. It was the night before the operation, and we were in Portland, and he was in a hospital room. And I remember this very distinctly. He was eating some strawberry ice cream. And he offered me a bite, and I don't know, I was shy. I didn't take it. And I remember him laughing. And that's the last time I saw him. Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's a favorite memory, but I just remember him being in pain, laying on the couch. And if I made any noise or anything, that would bother him. I just remember that. And then the most vivid memory was in the hospital. And then I do remember the funeral. They didn't let me see him, but my Uncle Sam was holding me back a little bit. But I remember seeing the family around the casket. And anyway, that's about it there. After my dad died, my brother Olin, who was 14, took over the farm. He had watched Dad, or worked with Dad, and so he knew pretty much what to do. So anyway, he worked up the ground. We had 2 John Deere tractors and and the equipment. And then we had some help during the harvest time, when it was time to take the ryegrass to the warehouse. We had help there. Well, somebody had to drive the trucks. He didn't have a driver's license. But anyway. And then it was kind of like I had a 14-year-old dad, because when we had to do something, I don't care if you were able to reach the pedals of a car or a tractor or whatever, you drove that thing. I remember driving a 41 Chevy pickup with a 4-wheel wagon full of ryegrass one time. And they didn't have any trailer brakes, but anyway, I was I was driving it on the road and come to a stop sign. I hit the brakes and nothing happened. It just, all the weight just pushed me right through the stop sign. But anyway, that's the end of that story. And then grade school, the first through the third grade, I went to a little one-room country school, and a mile and a half from home, and you walked to get there, and along either the country road, but I took a shortcut through our 80-acre field, and because the road made a big turn, so I could save a little bit of distance that way. And anyway, at third grade, I remember there was only 6 kids in that school. And so the next year, I've been fourth through sixth grade. They put us on a bus and sent us to Shed, Oregon, to the grade school there. And then 7th grade, they decided to bus us to Tangent, Oregon. And so, anyway, when I was 10 years old, Mom remarried to Fred Kaufman. Yeah, and let's see, they had a kid then by the name of Johnny, and let's see, he ended up being 12 years younger than me. So I had a brother 11 years older and one 12 years younger. And we never did anything together at all. The things that I did, recreation, was with my brother, Olin. Who was older, you know. And Olin got married and to Laverne, and we moved out of the old farmhouse, and then Olin moved in there, and then to work on the farm, nobody really wanted to drive me every day back and forth, so that's when the motorcycle started. So when I was in the 8th grade, we sold a calf. I guess the calf was mine, I don't know, sold it. I bought a Mustang motorcycle. It would go 65 miles an hour. And so I would drive it back and forth, and you know, I didn't mind at all. This was fun. And so anyway, yeah, that's how I got to and from work. And then, well, I really needed a car too, you know, and so to make some money to buy a car, I worked for other farmers, and I did work some construction in high school, and then I worked at a turkey processing plant that killed the turkeys, and you know, went from live turkeys to packaged. And naturally, I was the one with the knife and cut their throats. And so there was a lot of blood, man. But anyway, in fact, I skipped school to do that over Thanksgiving so I could work. I needed some money, yeah. But yeah, and then I worked for Berge Construction too in the summertime. And when I was 17, I was able to buy a car. And I did send you a picture. Did you happen to see it?
Yeah.
That was a 51 Ford that I had. And yeah, and then I bought a 500 matchless motorcycle. So that was my mode of transportation. And let's see, Olin, my brother, ended up, well, he had bought a Whizzer motorbike back when. I'm going to back up a little bit in history because I then rode that. I don't know, he wanted to see if I could ride it too. So we took the seat off so I could reach the pedals. And you had a compression release, and you pedaled it down the lane, and then closed the compression and had a hand throttle right there. And so I would ride it around the yard, I know I fell. I must not have hurt myself. But then I rode that for a while too on the roads when I was just a little kid. Anyway, we'll get back to the car. Anyway, high school. Yeah, I went to Albany High School. I didn't have the car yet, but I rode the bus to Albany, freshman and sophomore year. And then junior year, I went to Scio High School. And I graduated from Scio. And that is really where I met my wife. We really didn't date in high school. She says I waited till I got out of college and got smart and came back and dated her. And then, anyway, long story. I had an interest in electronics. And the way I got that interest, let's see, my cousin Dick Headings, were over at his house, and he had some earphones and a germanium diode, and he had one side hooked up to some bed springs, which worked as an antenna, and that's all the electronics there was one germanium diode. Put the headphones on, and you got a radio station. And that fascinated me. I thought, man, I got to figure out how they did that. So I started buying magazines, Popular Electronics, and all that stuff, and they showed schematic diagrams, and I learned what the components looked like, and all that stuff. So Oregon Technical Institute, now it's OIT, then it was OTI, but they had an accredited program in electronics engineering. So I decided, well, I didn't know how I was going to get there because I didn't have any money. So anyway, I had an aunt that died, and since part of the inheritance that she was going to give to my dad went to the kids, so I ended up with $500, and that was enough for one term of college. Think about it now. It costs a little more than that. And so anyway, Olin and I went to a bank and borrowed the money it was 2 years of college, and I got an associate degree in electronics engineering. That's what I ended up with. So where were we? You want me to back up? Grandma. Yeah, your grandma, my wife. Yeah, let's see. Anyway, yeah, she looked pretty good by that time. And anyway, one thing about, I don't know, I was going to say, kids should have a long engagement, know that person really well. So going through 2 years of high school, you kind of know their personality, Yeah, if they get mad at you every day, you know it, So we dated, and yeah, I just about made a big mistake because I dated a girl in high school that would have been totally disaster if I'd have married her, but I won't go into that. That can be a pretty good story too, but you don't need to know that. I kept like a 4x5 card catalog on all these girls, and I rated them, and I had their phone number and their address and rated them one to 5, and when I first met her, she wasn't a 5. And that's when I rated her. She was about a 3, I don't know. But anyway, after we got married, she found that box. So I had to there was some explaining I had to do. But anyway, yeah, enough of that, Wyatt. Okay. Yeah, there was this demand for electronics people. So I had there was 4 or 5 offers before I got out of college. There was Oregon National Laboratories, there was Boeing, there was Teledyne, there was, I don't know, all these employers were coming to school to interview us. So anyway, I decided I did take a class at OIT on atomic energy. And the nuclear thing did fascinate me too. So I got an offer to go to Hanford Atomic Reservation, which General Electric was running for the Atomic Energy Commission. So anyway, I went to work there. Let's see, I stayed out 1 year, one term of college to work. So anyway, so it was end of December in, first of the year 1961. I went to work for for General Electric. And and then in February, Sharon and I was married. And so I had an apartment rented, and that's where we lived. And then we bought a house in about 1965, 4 or 5. Probably, I think in 1965. And a 3-bedroom ranch house for $12,500. Think about it. Things were a little cheaper then, huh? Yeah. And we stayed there, and I made $1,000 on it when I sold it. I think it sold it, well, I think $2,000. I think I sold it for $14,500. And then we had a place with a couple acres over at West Richland. It's a nice brick house, whatever, and I bought it for $23,000. So the property, the orchards, and all that stuff still wasn't much money. I started working in the reactor buildings. It's called the 100 areas. And no matter what kind of education you had to work as a trainee, and you had to work with somebody, a technician. Okay? So, and every 3 months, you went to a different reactor building as a trainee. So I went to 100F, 100D, and DR, and 100H area. So there was 4 reactors I worked at. Each reactor had a big water plant, and the reactor was cooled. These uranium slugs, U-235, were loaded into these horizontal tubes, and so they started the chain reaction with the control rods and all that stuff. And anyway, the cooling was one pass through the reactor, goes into a settling basin, and then dumped into the Columbia River. And think about it, I think there was 9 reactors. And you knew when the reactor was running because there was steam boiling. You could see it 20 miles away, boiling out of these settling ponds, because it was hot water hit these settling ponds. And that was safe until there was a fuel rupture. And now all of a sudden, radiation was being released into the settling basin. And then when it cooled off to a certain degree, it was dumped into the Columbia River. So there was a group that was going around sampling. It looked like it was a wonderful job, because the bus would drive by and you'd see them loading up their boat, and they were going fishing. They'd get an order for a sturgeon here and or they go shoot a deer there and they'd analyze it and see if they picked up any radiation. Well, and then they would, I don't know, radiation got released. I'll tell you, there was I don't know, it's hard for me to remember in order all this stuff. So after the reactors, finally I worked my 3 years and I was now a technician. And then later on I was an instrument specialist working in analytical labs. And then I worked as an engineer and doing vacation relief for planner and schedulers and all the bosses, you know, instrument foreman and electrical foreman. And what they were doing was grooming me for a subsection manager. I could see it coming, but I'd rather work with my hands, you know, and troubleshoot things, because while working there, I worked in some research and process support. The labs I really liked working there, because there were a lot of PhDs and they needed an electronics guy to help them build their empire. And anyway, I invented some things during that time, and some things, one item, that all revolved around detection, radiation detection. There was a personal radiation detector that would detect 3 energy levels, 3 types of radiation: alpha particles, beta particles, and gamma radiation. And so alpha wouldn't penetrate the skin, but it was dangerous if you inhaled it, because it's the contamination that's dangerous. If you ingested it, a lot of it will just pass through your body, but some would be left. Alpha, well, like if it gets in your body, I say alpha, but I say alpha particles, okay. They would go to the liver, they would go to the bones, and the half-life, radiation half-life, is 24,000 years. So it would stay in your body for 24,000 years. So, but different radiation elements called isotopes. Okay, well, you don't want me to go into atoms, but I guess if you have an element, say cobalt, something like that, and you modified the protons in the nucleus, it would determine the element pretty much, but yet if you rearrange the neutrons in that element, by radiation, it was unstable. So there's where you got your radiation too. I don't know. I don't know how to go into all this stuff, but since alpha particles, I know there was some contamination and it just kind of blew all over this place in the 200 areas. They couldn't clean it up because it was everywhere. So they spray painted it white, and they called it the white room. So the radiation couldn't penetrate through the paint. So it sealed it in. So the transmitters, the pneumatic transmitters that were there, the radiation was sealed. There were a lot of these transmitters, pneumatic transmitters, that would measure the liquid level of a lot of these big vessels, which was in the canyon. Okay, some radiation got sucked up into the transmitter, and it kind of came out of the transmitter, pneumatic transmitter, and contaminated this one area of the of this I don't know, they had these galleries that went forever with just one transmitter after the other. And so anyway, since one part of it was contaminated, they painted the area white to seal in these alpha particles, because it was alpha americium, I think 131, and plutonium 239 and all that stuff created these alpha particles. And they were very little energy level. So the white room, by spraying that room white, they sealed it all in, and then they blocked it off. And so it wouldn't, even if it happened again in that area, it wouldn't go to other areas. Okay, let's go back a little bit to the reactors. They would discharge these reactors. They could discharge these tubes, and the slugs would go down into pure water. Okay, and that would be a shield from the radiation, because when they come out of the reactor, they are hot. You could look down through these slats, and there's glowing, this beautiful blue. It's so radioactive, called Cherenkov radiation. Okay, after they would die down, after it was dying down, I don't know how they did this, because I wasn't involved in it. But they would load it onto a train, and then it would come to the chemical processing plant and chemically separate the plutonium from all the other uranium. It was called the Purex building, the 200 building. It was in the 200 areas. And it was called Purex building because it was plutonium uranium extraction. So that's where that was done. That building was about a quarter mile long and 4 floors. And then there was another area about 40 feet underground yet too. So anyway, a lot was happening in that building. And then after this downstairs area was getting close to the final loadout of plutonium. And so I remember it was called, there was a Q cell, N cell, and PR room where the last one was. There was 3 guys that worked down there. I think they worked a different shift, but they got into something because all 3 of them died of cancer in a short period of time from each other. I don't know. A lot of this stuff is not classified anymore, because you can look it up on YouTube, actually. So anyway, there's that train, this radioactive train. After everything kind of shut down, it was buried out in the desert. I think buried on the train track, and it was, I don't know, it was concrete, some was encapsulated. The train was all encapsulated in this. But anyway, look it up. You can look it up. Just Hanford train buried in or radioactive train buried in the Hanford Desert, and it'll tell you some of the story. When I was out on the farm, let's see, I had a BB gun I got for Christmas. That was my favorite present, and there were a lot of quail around there. So even though a BB gun would not kill a quail, I was always stalking them. And I was learning how to hunt them. First time I shot a shotgun, I was about, it was on that farm. I couldn't have been, I'm trying to relate age. I was probably maybe 10. Yeah, I aimed it at a covey of quail and pulled the trigger, and it just about knocked me flat, that old 12 gauge. It was my dad's gun that he had bought years ago. But Anyway, you'd have thought there had been a bunch of quail laying dead on the ground, but there was one dead quail. So that was my first victim with a shotgun. When I was in high school, there was a lot of pheasants around and stuff, so there was bird hunting and all that stuff. And let's see, and after I got my car, junior in high school, I carried my shotgun to school. Now that would be really bad these days, but I would pheasant hunt on the way to school and on the way back. I remember going to school one time. I had this Ford Victoria that the windows rolled out, and I shot left-handed. I wasn't really left-handed, but I shot that way. So there was this pheasant out there. I remember this one especially. I was sitting in the car, and I just ground sluiced him out the windows, the far window of the car. And so now the shotgun's in the car. Now I got a dead pheasant. So I take the pheasant out, and wood shop was my first class in school. Actually, it was the main shop. It was wood shop, metal shop, whatever. And so I had a teacher, Mr. Cole, and I asked him, I said, "Do you want a pheasant? I got a dead pheasant in the car." He said, "Okay." So here I am carrying a dead pheasant through the gymnasium out to the wood shop, and so he takes it and disappears. Well, he dresses the pheasant. I never seen it again. I told him I gave it to him. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't against the law then. I mean, nobody paid any, it wasn't. I never shot anybody, and nobody got shot. And there were kids with shotguns in their cars. Yeah.
Man, what a different day now.
What a different day, yeah. But, okay, hobbies. Let's go back. Okay. When we were living in Richland, Washington, and motorcycles, the group that I kind of associated with, and friends, we all rode motorcycles because there's a desert, and so I got into desert racing and trials and motocross while we were in Richland. I had to buy Sharon's ring. I sold that matchless motorcycle. Got enough money out of it to buy her ring. Okay, so I was without a motorcycle only about 2 years, maybe. And then I bought a 300 Honda. Honda came on the scene. They were making a pretty cool motorcycle. They had a few sort of dirt bikes, but most of them weren't really competition. Well, they were competition later on, but there was road bikes. So I had a 300 Honda Superhawk, I think it was called. Yeah, motorcycles, we did the competition thing. And then I learned how to water ski there. And then at one of the reactors, the boss that I worked for was really into archery. And so I got interested in archery, and he got me into the archery club. And so I shot competition target archery for a while, and then, let's see, this was 1962 when I got the first bow, and that was my target bow. And then in 1963, I bought a hunting bow. There was an outfit called Wing Archery. They made some good bows. And so anyway, we were hunting. The season wasn't very long in those days, but we'd go hunting. The best hunting area was along the Klickitat River, so we had to travel a ways. And then, the bucks would migrate out of the the Indian reservations and down into the lowlands, and you'd see them moving most of the day. But anyway, that was fun, and let's see, what else did we do there? Oh yeah, bass fishing. It was great bass fishing, along with the backwaters of the Columbia River, and bass and crappie. They were good eating. So mainly fishing, bird, and there was a lot of birds there too. You know, pheasants out around Pasco, out in the wheat fields and so forth, and checker hunting, and so bird hunting and fishing and motorcycling. That's a lot what I did. And did some water skiing. Friends had some boats, and so that's where I learned to water ski at that time. Sharon and I started having kids living there in Richland, about 4 years after we were married. And our first child went full term and died. And she is buried in Richland Cemetery. It was a girl, buried in the Richland Cemetery with a marker saying, "Baby Girl Nofziger." So if anybody wants to stop by there, that's where she's at. And then she had some miscarriages. I think she was pregnant 7 times. So if they had all lived, we'd have had a big family. So anyway, Todd and Tanya. Tanya was your mother, was born there in 1965. 15 months later, Todd was born. She was born there. She went to school there. When we went to Rainier, she was 7th grade when she started school there. That was kind of a difficult time for her. Rainier was a small school, kind of, and a lot of cliques, established groups, and she had. Well, this is about Tanya. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but she liked the kids started swimming for the YMCA. Her neighbors, mainly because they were swimming, and she started swimming when she was in 7th grade. And when she got to junior high school, she was the Oregon State champion in freestyle, which is rather amazing. Yeah. But anyway, then she won it again the second year. And so that set her up for college offers of all kinds. So anyway, that's about Tanya. You'll have to interview her. We had another daughter, Carla, that was born there too. And she was, 8 years younger than Todd. When you're still a kid and you've got a kid you got to raise, you're going to make some mistakes, No, it all worked out well. They didn't get into drugs and all that good stuff. And they had some good friends. Carla was probably the easiest one to raise. She caused no trouble. And so she was essentially grew up around Rainier, because she was a baby when we got there. Just, I don't know, she might have been 3 years old. I don't know. Well, with Ryan, he ended up being a really good swimmer. And he had college offers when he graduated. But I know there was coaches fighting over who wanted to train Ryan, and I don't know, that was kind of a mess, but he went to the junior nationals, and I think they called it the Olympic nationals, but it was junior nationals, it wasn't senior. But you'll have to interview him on that one. I know it was probably more difficult for Tanya, but she had some good friends then too later on. But at first is what I mean. It was difficult kind of fitting in Rainier. And when she got the state championships, I know there was jealousy, Yeah. I remember she got her Letterman jacket stolen, you know. Anyway, yeah, her story again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm rambling on. So go ahead. Let's see. As far as hobbies, there, I got into scuba diving. I got into windsurfing. I bought a Bayliner boat with a cuddy cabin, and caught a lot of salmon out on the mouth of the Columbia River. And then the biggest salmon I ever caught, a 34-pound Chinook I caught out of a canoe. And I thought I was going to get wet because I had to stand up to get him in the canoe. But anyway, salmon fishing, bass fishing. I didn't do any motorcycle racing there. I stopped at about age 30. We're back in Richland, Washington, and I'm at Hanford working at the reactors. This was probably about a year or 2 years after I got there. Okay, I get drafted. I go to the Selective Service office, and the only nice person I think that ever worked at a Selective Service office. I was supposed to go to Spokane with the group that month, and I just mumbled. I just said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "That's when I was scheduled for my vacation." And she paused a little bit, and she says, "I don't want to mess you up altogether." She says, "Why don't you take your vacation, and then you can leave the following month?" Okay, so I'm on vacation, and all of a sudden, President Kennedy he says, "All married men are now exempt from the draft." And so I get home, there's a change of classification, and all of a sudden, I'm not drafted. But I missed it by 1 month, maybe less than a month. But if that woman wouldn't have been nice, I'd have been in Vietnam, and since I had the degree in electronics, I don't know, they weren't too careful picking, maybe I could have been an instructor, but if I'd have got drafted into the infantry, Wyatt, you probably wouldn't have been here today. I might not have made it out of there. Yeah, because it was pretty terrible about the time I'd have got drafted. We're looking at right around 1960, I'm guessing 63. I can't remember when Kennedy was shot. He was president 62, 63, or right around there sometime. But anyway, that's the draft story. Staying with the same woman for 65 years is part of it is kind of somehow choosing the right person. Maybe God brought us together. Yeah, you've got to have. Let me kind of get into the way I see a lot of divorces happen, which didn't happen with Sharon and I. One thing, if there's alcohol involved, I've seen a lot of divorces happen because alcohol was the root of the problem. I've seen that happen. I've seen it where one person was a Christian, the other one wasn't. That sometimes is also a problem. And like interests, after I retired, we traveled by motorcycle. Yeah, I could have married a woman that absolutely wasn't going to get on a motorcycle. I've seen that happen too. So if she wouldn't have wanted to ride on the motorcycle, I wouldn't have either. We'd have missed a lot of fun. We've traveled through Canada and northwestern United States, and it was a fun way to go. We journey traveled with one other couple on a motorcycle. But the moral of the story is get to really know that person on a long engagement before you get married. Well, I tell my grandkids, be careful who you marry. It's, no, get to really know them. And so you know their personality really well. If they've really got a temper, if they're using alcohol, if you don't have the same beliefs, there could be a problem. And so, you know, Wyatt, you might see this really beautiful girl, but she is not the one for you, you know. But, I don't know, really get to know them, and you will know. I think you will know. I know people. There's divorce with some of my kids, and I don't know, I think a couple of them, the alcohol was the root problem. It really was. But I guess they had the attitude that, well, maybe I can change them, or maybe they weren't aware of it. They didn't go with them long enough, you know. I have seen, like high school, I have seen kids in high school that, well, they had quite a bit of beer in high school. By the time they hit 40, they were alcoholics. And if they got married during that time, that was the cause of the divorce. Just get to know somebody as a friend for a period of time until you get to know them. And pretty soon, if you find out you have like interests, just kind of go for it, you know? Because you'll be able to tell if the gal likes you really well, or if you like her really well, and you think you want to spend your life with that person. Okay, when we first heard that our daughter Tanya was going to have a child, our first granddaughter, we were pretty excited. But she was living in Nebraska at the time, and so when she was born, Sharon went to Nebraska to be with, to help take care of Tanya's daughter, which is Cassie. And I was working, so I didn't see her until they traveled to Oregon, to Rainier, Oregon. I don't know, might have been 6 months later. I'm not sure. But I remember walking into the house and seeing old Cassie there, and I was excited. Yeah. Now, Cassie, a few years later, I mean, we were living in Arlington, and she was visiting again. And so I like to fish. I'm going to take Cassie fishing. And so we go down there to the kind of the backwaters of the Columbia right there. And I kind of knew where she would catch a fish because I knew the area well. And I cast it out, and boom, I had a hit, and I handed her the rod. And she brought it in. She fought it okay and drug it up on the bank. And she looked at me and she says, "I'm not going to touch that thing." And so I knew she wasn't going to really be a fisherman. But she did catch some later on and stuff in life. I need to tell you about the Nofziger cancer history. It's a little different. First of all, my dad died in 1944, and on his 36th birthday, and he had brain cancer, and he died during the operation when they were trying to remove the tumor. And then my brother died at about he died when he was around 63, and he had a rare form of leukemia. And my sister died about age 56, and she had ovarian cancer that metastasized to the lungs. My little brother, Johnny, he had multiple sclerosis, and then he got colon cancer, and he died at about age 56. And my mom had lymphoma, cancer of the lymph nodes, and she died at 78. And then we'll just fast forward to when I was 70. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and they didn't find it soon enough. They had to remove it robotically. And then they were telling me all about the treatments I could have, and I really told them I wasn't going to do any of it. But then, about a year later, probably 2012, the PSA started going up, and my doctor says, "You better do something." So I let him give me that hormone shot, and it knocked the PSA down, but then there were the great side effects that come with it. And
What were the type of side effects?
Tiredness, hot flashes, brain fog. I still got brain fog, as you can tell. But it was pretty miserable. Then he gave me the hormone shot, and it was called Lupron, and then later on they gave me Eligard, which was essentially the same thing. And sometimes I'd let it go until the PSA got up pretty high, and then we'd just knock it down again with that shot. And that went on until 2015. And all of a sudden I felt pain in my tailbone, and the doctor said, "Well, your PSA isn't really all that high, but we better do a bone scan." So they did a bone scan, and when I looked at the computer screen, it was pretty obvious of where it was, but it just showed up as lights, kind of little LEDs, like there was lights on the tailbone and around the T3, T4 vertebrae on my spine, and under my left arm and under my right arm and the ribs and up by my collarbone, and thought, oh wow, this is going to be kind of a painful exit. And so after the tailbone, I was still feeling that. I started feeling it in the spine, and it was moving pretty fast. And then under my left arm, the left rib started, I felt that. And it was getting really hard to ride in a car. Every little bump you'd hit, you'd feel. And my bicycle, I have a mountain bike. I was at that time just kind of riding it around town. And man, I couldn't do that anymore. I had a motorcycle that was a comfortable bike, but I couldn't ride the motorcycle anymore either. So at that time, my granddaughter Cassie and her husband Iman was here from Norway, and they were strong Christians, and they spent time with some missionary work in Africa and stuff, and we were staying up kind of late. I kind of wanted to take them over to the coast the next day, but I knew it was going to take a lot of ibuprofen, so I was set up about six pills to get me to the coast, and probably 6 pills to get me back. But anyway, it was about midnight, and Cassie was saying, "Grandpa, can I pray for you?" And I said, "Well, sure." And so she and Iman prayed. Sharon was there too, and they prayed that the pain would leave. And so I went to bed. 6 hours later, I woke up, and I felt different. I knew something was different. I wasn't feeling the pain. And so I didn't say anything at first. And I didn't take the ibuprofen, but I took it with me. And I drove to the coast, and I was okay. And we came back, and at that time, at the end of the day, I told Cassie, I don't feel any pain anymore. And she just smiled at me. Kind of interesting. And so, still no pain. Next day, no pain. And about a week later, I decided I'm going to try to ride my motorcycle. I rode the motorcycle. There was still no pain. Got on the bicycle. I was still okay then. I don't know, the doctors, I'd go to the doctor and they'd ask me how the pain was, and I'd said, there isn't any. Oh man, did they jump on me then? They thought I found some magic cure that they didn't know about. So I told my cancer doctor, and I told him the story. And he said, well, that's nothing we did. And so then same thing happened. When you go to the doctor, all my history is right there. I got bone cancer, And so my primary care doctor, he listened then to the story, and he says, I'm a Christian, and I've heard this before. That's what he said. So that was kind of interesting. Okay. I had zero pain in the back for, until 2024. I was watching the PSA, and it was still moving a little bit. And so that showed that the cancer, since there was no pain, it must have come out of my bones. But I wasn't supposed to lift anything, but I just kept testing it. I like to go to use a canoe to go fishing, and so I'd lift, and there wasn't any pain, and the bones didn't break, because they said if I break a bone, they're not going to heal, because they kind of spreads through all the bones. And so I tested it and tested it. Finally, I was lifting as hard as what my muscles could stand. But anyway, I'm sure a lot of people didn't believe what was happening, but the people that was close to me knew the story, and they could see what was happening. In July of 2024, I still wasn't feeling any pain, but the PSA was starting to really increase, which is just a marker of what's happening. Shows that the cancer had metastasized and so forth. So the doctor said, let's do a PET scan, which will tell me if the cancer is in some organ or bones or something. So I go in for the old cancer doctor. He was going to give me the results of the PET scan, and he sat down and he said, he didn't even really look at me. You could tell I don't know, he wasn't sure. It was pretty serious. So he says, you've got cancer of the spine. Says, oh, well, I've been here before. But so I wanted a hard copy of the test. I wanted to see this, so I've got the hard copy. And it showed that I also had cancer of a lymph node and in the spine. And so then kind of gradually I could start feeling something in the middle of my back, some pain kind of. And then it got worse, and then it got worse, and back to the ibuprofen, and it was hard to sit down, and it was hard to lay down, and I thought, man, this is going to be rough. I got to spend the rest of my life standing up, because it wasn't too bad standing up, but you'd pretty much feel it all the time. So I don't know. I took it there for a while. I was taking it every 6 hours, 24/7. I was just day and night. I was taking the maximum of ibuprofen that I thought I should take. And I was about to ask for some oxycodone or something like that. And then one day, I don't know, all of a sudden the pain left me. And the pain is still gone. But once in a while, I think now lately that I can feel something in my back, but I can't tell if it's the cancer pain or not. Something about cancer pain is a little different. You sort of feel it all the time. But anyway, that's where I am right now. I'm doing pretty good. And I don't know, after the PET scan, they gave me another shot of a hormone shot, because I thought, man, I might need it again. And they gave me this pill, bicalutamide, I think it was called. And so now with all those things, I was having trouble breathing, and I look up all the side effects, and bicalutamide, a common side effect of that is difficulty breathing. And it stays in if you come off of it, it still stays in your body almost about 30 days. So I said, I've had enough. I'm coming off of that everything. So I came off of the bicalutamide. I didn't have another shot. And in 30 days, I could breathe pretty good again. So that was just a side effect of that pill. I still have some hot flashes, but not bad. I had asked the doctor one time how long the hot flashes were going to last. He says, they're probably never going to go away. Yeah, well, thank you, doctor. But I don't have them that often at night. At times, yeah, I'll have a few during the day. I've got fans all over the house, which kind of helps check it, the battery-operated fans. But anyway, that's the cancer story. I get tired of telling them giving me a 1-year lifespan, or telling me I'm going to die and all this stuff. And for God's sakes, don't go on the internet and listen to stories. They're pretty wild, and I don't need to listen to it. It's okay. I made it to 85, and I didn't think I would get there. Yeah.
You're living one day at a time.
One day at a time. Yep. Just go fishing. Things get rough, just go fishing. I'm down to, as far as the hobbies, I've peeled all of them off pretty much, except fishing, and I do ride the mountain bike sometimes. Sold the motorcycle. With brain fog, I did not want my wife on the back with me when I'm riding, and I probably shouldn't be there either, so I quit. So I never thought motorcycles were dangerous until I sold mine, and then I thought, they are kind of dangerous. But that bike was so fast. Yeah, 0 to 60 and the specs said 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds and 0 to 100 in 6 seconds. And whenever I was out of town, it would see 100 sometimes. I mean, you get behind a car, you go to pass it, and boom, you look down, geez, I'm at 100 miles an hour. But it was fun, good adrenaline rush. More of adrenaline rush than if I was playing golf and watching a little white ball go in a hole. That's not sport to me. But anyway, well, I've done 130. The bike was supposed to go 155. It was a 4-cylinder. Okay, it was an FJR 1300 Yamaha 4-cylinder engine with 145 horsepower. So that's about like having 1,600 horsepower in my pickup. And Anyway, it was really fun. It was just a great bike, really reliable. It's one that if I had to engineer one and build it myself, that's about what I would have had. But a lot of people are scared of them. I mean, if you better have a good grip or you're going to lose your grip. If you're really have to do some fast acceleration, you may it may jerk your hands off the handlebars and you're going to land in the pavement. But yeah, I know people that had them and they sold them. They were scared of it, but it was all controllable. It was wonderful. And Grandma, she'd know when we started to get on a ramp going onto a freeway. She would hang on tight. We called it ramp shooting. We'd really take off, and by the time we hit the freeway, we were doing well over the speed limit. But I never got stopped for speeding on it. But that was a miracle. Yeah. But she liked it. It was comfortable. We had fun traveling on it. It got good mileage, and man, there was all the power in the world. So that's my motorcycle story. Growing up alongside the grandkids, they were my entertainment, really. You know, when you get older, you drop your hobbies. Well, I'd take them fishing. I took you fishing, Wyatt. I remember we was in a canoe. I had a Winona 17-foot canoe, and it weighed 60 pounds. It wasn't the lightest in the world. I bought a lighter one and didn't like it. But I kind of made a bass boat out of it. I hung a gas-powered motor on the side and offset the weight. I had a sandbag on the other side to balance it out. And then if I wasn't using it, I had an electric motor that I used a lot fishing. And we caught a zillion fish and filled the freezer many times with the canoe, fishing out of the canoe. But anyway, growing up around with the grandkids, I've got basketball players, couple basketball players, and one I watch now weekly. A granddaughter, she plays in a D1 college for California State University, Northridge, and she's doing well. Good three-point shooter, excellent on defense. And then I've got a 6'5" grandson that plays in California also, and I don't know, I just like to watch him. And Wyatt, I like to see what he's doing and see what Cassie's doing, and it's entertainment, yeah. Yeah, the grandkids are great. And then there's great grandkids that I see on FaceTime, you know. It keeps me busy, and I like to see the different personalities. They're all different. Even my kids, they were all different, you know. You can't say, okay, this is how you raise a kid. Baloney. They will prove you wrong, but they've all been good kids. They really have. Let's see, my great-grandson, Elian, which is Cassie's son, they were here, and he's quite a character. And anyway, I've got a couple ukuleles, and I was playing one, and oh man, he was dancing around, and he really liked the music, and so I gave him one ukulele, and he was clapping, and he was strumming that ukulele, and then before he left, I bought him one to take with him. I mean, he's gonna be a musician. He likes music, and I think his little brother now, which. Yeah, what's his name? I forgot. Mika, yeah, little Mika. Yeah, I see FaceTime videos of music playing, and he's dancing too. So they're going to be the musical brothers, and he likes motorcycles too. If he sees them on TV, He's interested, yeah, because he spent over a year in Kenya, and there was a lot of motorcycles over there, and he loves soccer. Holy cow, he is good at soccer, and he is only, well, he was 3 years old then, you know, and he was a good player. Yeah, kind of amazing. So it's more entertainment. I'll be watching there too. Yeah, no, it's fun. Well, that's pretty much my story, unless you want to go back to Hanford and tell some more stories there. I don't know. You're going to ask me what my legacy, what I want my legacy to be. I don't. Forget it. I'm gonna let history decide.